First off, let's just get this out of the way. This book has what every Edge of the Empire career sourcebook has. Ideas for integrating technicians into a campaign, as well as new motivation and obligation charts made specifically with the technician in mind. Plus, ideas for backgrounds for each of the 6 specializations. Speaking of specializations, the core book gives us the fairly tough and resourceful, but ultimately repair-focused mechanic, the well-rounded outlaw tech, and the master computer hacker, the slicer. This book introduces cybertech, droid tech, and modder. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the specs. I mean, it's gotta be hard to come up with 6 different specializations, all with a tech focus, without, spreading the idea of a technician too thin, still having depthful gameplay. I really was expecting a lot of hybrid specializations. Part mechanic, part pilot, part mechanic, part knowledge guy, and so on. But they did a pretty decent job. Not a complete success across the board, but they're not terrible. I like them just fine, especially droid tech and cyber tech. Those two are both good. Modder, to me, shows they're definitely kind of running on some fumes. They had a really good idea, though. That's the thing. They had a really good idea, and they just didn't execute it that well. But yeah, overall, not a bad set of specs. Okay, so the signature abilities. First of all, we have what's called Inventive Creation. And this is basically MacGyver. It's really a souped-up version of Contraption from the Mechanic specialization. Obviously, you can upgrade the crap out of it, do a lot more with it, including making a Silhouette 2 vehicle, which is pretty awesome. Next, we have Unmatched Calibration. You basically just reroll dice. That's it. You just reroll dice. Incredibly helpful. And of course, as you upgrade it, you get better at rerolling your dice. And it will fit with just about any character, which is nice. Maybe not as flashy or as sexy as the other ability, but it's still pretty powerful and worth taking. Now, the species section is a little weird. First of all, we get 4 species choices instead of the normal 3, but the downside is that only one of them is even remotely technician focused. Most of them are suited towards some other area. Now, I like taking a character who's naturally strong in one area and bringing them in a different area. They're a bit more well-rounded that way, and it's a bit more interesting than taking them in the direction they're clearly built to go into. That being said, when you're buying a source book for a particular career, you want species that will show off that career at least a little bit. And when only one of them does, the fact that there's one extra doesn't really make up for that. It's a slight against the book. Not a big slight, but it is a slight against the book. Edge of the Empire in general isn't exactly drowning in the strong intellect species that I've seen. So, yeah, it would have been nice to see a few intellect and technology-focused species for this book. The 4 choices we get are the Dug, the Basilisk, and the 2 types of Mustafarians. The Dug, which you might recognize from Episode 1, have an interesting past, and present for that matter, with a particular type of Gran on Malastare. The Gran, which I talked about in the Colonist sourcebook, invaded, and the Dug are now slaves on their own world, resulting in a rivalry akin to Trandoshan and Wookiee, or Mon Cal and Quarren. Functionally, they also make for excellent pilots, and not in a boring way like this, but in a good way, like this. They also get a free rank in a skill that's completely unrelated that makes them a bit more well-rounded, which I like. The Basilisk should also look pretty familiar. This bird-like species, yeah, they're birds, apparently. This guy, bird. This guy, bird. Whatever. And are naturally tough and durable, making them good melee fighters. Also, because of their extra arms, get a unique ability which allows them for more action economy in structured play, which could be useful to just about anyone. The Mustafarians are a bug-like species from the lava planet Mustafar, and come in 2 types, northern and southern. The only stat difference between the 2 is that they each get a single unique talent. As you might imagine, the southern are the tougher of the 2. The northern, on the other hand, get a rank of the amazing new Eye for Detail talent I talked about earlier, which makes them the only species here with even a little bit of a tech focus. There are a pair of blasters that aren't quite as powerful as their core book counterparts, but make up for it by being more upgradable. There's also quite a few tool weapon hybrids which I've raved about in other reviews, you're probably sick of hearing it by now, but basically they function as weapons that can also help you with your mechanics checks, which is great. Some even have a few custom attachments that make them even more destructive. There are a few pieces of armor and cybernetics. Half the cybernetics are droid only, but one of the other implants, which is non-droid only, increase your implant cap by 2. The slicer gets some gear of their own that'll help them with their slicing checks. That big one in the middle there is used to defend a ship or base from enemy hackers. But of course, the mechanic gets a lot more tools overall. Moving on, there are absolute gobs of gear attachments. The weapon attachments are mostly of the bigger risk, bigger reward variety. It's a techie pushing their gear well beyond factory specs, which make the weapon slightly more unstable. In multiple cases, this means it can cause harm to either the weapon or the user. There are of course plenty of armor attachments as well. Most of them are pretty affordable, which is more than I could say for the core book armor attachments. Most of the speeders and ships are for salvage and repair, though more so in name than actual function. There is a cybershop ship, which is often a converted medical vessel used as a mobile base for illegal cybernetic enhancements. Actually, no, it's just a medical version of a CR-90. There is a highly modifiable multi-role starfighter. It has a whole bunch of custom attachments, and any attachment on it can be quickly changed, which is great if you have a big group ship base and you want to have a support fighter or two that can be refitted for multiple roles, for multiple missions. On one mission, it could be a defense fighter. On another, it could be a landing shuttle. Finally, we can move on to my absolute favorite part of the book, the part that alone is worth a purchase, the crafting rules. So the way crafting works is, you have a basic profile for a basic weapon. Fist weapon, bladed weapon, vibro weapon, energy pistol, projectile rifle, that sort of thing. And you'll have a difficulty of a certain check to craft it, typically mechanics, although sometimes survival works with the simpler weapons. You also get a cost to craft it in terms of time and money, and when you do craft it, you get a set of base stats for crafting it with the most simplest amount of success. You know, just a single success, you get this. So in most cases, when you roll your check, you'll get something that's almost exactly like something from the core book, but slightly worse and at half cost. However, where the customization really comes in is when you roll your check, all those advantages you hopefully rolled can be spent on awesome additional qualities you can add to that weapon. And not only can you make it as good as the core book counterpart, you can make it even better than that, and better than the equipment you'll find in the career source books. But the GM can also spend threats and despairs on horrible things to the weapon. You can craft just about everything, any type of weapon or cybernetic, gadgets, and various tools. You can also craft droids, as I said before. The difference is there are two separate crafting checks, both for building the chassis as well as programming it. And you can give it all sorts of programming directives, translation, healing, repair, combat, and so on. However, they don't have the charts for crafting armor or lightsabers, so if you're interested in those, you'll have to get separate books. And crafting can be really difficult right away, and I failed quite a few checks before we even started our campaign, crafting a lot of the starting gear. But with a lot of progress and work, you can get better at crafting, not only by improving your mechanics checks via normal play, but also you can build various gadgets, tools that will help you with your general skills. They should also probably be able to help you with your knowledge skills. I would house rule that. Yeah, why not? There are rules and guidelines for running technical encounters of all kind. Basically, it involves adding different kinds of checks in addition to the checks you would normally have to make. For example, if you're trying to hack a computer in a really stressful environment, maybe you have to make a cool or discipline check beforehand. And whether you succeed or fail at that check could add bonuses or penalties to your slicing check. They do this for nearly 20 or so skills, and have a specific penalty or bonus for each. They also have additional rules for slicing encounters, certain actions that a player can take, a difficulty chart, and of course a chart on spending advantages and threats. They also have just general advice for running slicing encounters. We of course have the job salary tables, both for mechanics and slicers, as well as a table on selling your crafted gear, which I actually have practical use for. And finally we have a technician reward called the workshop. Basically, you pick a skill, which could be computers, mechanics, medicine, or really anything that makes sense, and you create this location on a ship, or it could be on a home base, or wherever, and this will provide storage and also basic benefits to that particular skill. You can also upgrade your workshop with a number of benefits that you purchase. The downside is, neither the workshop or the benefits have any type of pricing attached to them, so you'll just have to make up your own. Okay, so this is the first career source book that I bought for Edge of the Empire, or the game in general, and in a way that's been kind of a bad thing, because it got my hopes up. To this day, I have yet to see a career source book that so lovingly takes care of a career like this book does, even with some of the downsides I said. This is the kind of book that every other career source book wishes it was. There's almost no fat in this book. You know, sometimes I feel some books rely a bit too much on just giving suggestions and advice for things. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but sometimes I feel like there's just not a lot of there, you know, not a lot of substance. There's that here too, but there's also plenty of stats and difficulties for checks and such. It doesn't really feel like any part of this book is wasted, you know, they use every part of the buffalo, so to speak. The gear selection is great, plenty of new roles. I love that they support both the slicers as well as the more mechanic-focused characters. Now, if you want to play a technician character, or already are, or thinking about it, and you pick up this book, I honestly cannot imagine you being disappointed. What more could you possibly want from this book? I have no idea. It really is the book that all career source books should aspire to be. Fantastic. Even if there are no techies amongst your group, I would still get this book. The gear and attachments alone makes it probably worth it. Especially oh my god, I love crafting so much in this game! And if you are a technician, or even an engineer from Rebellion, or any type of tech-focused character whatsoever, this is an absolute must-buy.